Can I welcome Vishnu Mohan to the stage? Where are you, Vishnu? Please give him a round of applause. He is the CEO of Havas Media Asia Pacific. Jeffrey Seah, the CEO of Southeast Asia for Viva Key, and the chap who runs the Asia Digital Leadership Team at said group. Give him a ripple of applause. And you've seen him before, Ajit Varghese, CEO of Maxis Asia. Thank you very much. Ajit, come sit down, sit down, sit down. Anywhere you like. I'm not going to sit with you. I'm going to stay as a participant in this. You're all mic'd up and ready to go. So what we thought we'd do with this is reflect on some of the issues that we've heard over the last 2 days as our closing session. A chance to give you guys the chance to ask some questions from the themes of the last 2 days to 3 of the leaders from agencies in this region. Okay, so I'm going to come at random with the roaming mic, which is going to be handed to me in a second, and I'm going to pick upon people. And if you ask a really interesting question, and it's the best question, then I'll make sure you get a free pass to the Festival of Media Asia next year. Is that a reasonable deal?
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty generous. You've seen our prices. Well, I hope you think it's been worth it. And if you're wondering when the Festival of Media Asia is going to be next year, I'd like you just to take out your BlackBerries, your iPhones, and just mark a little date in there for me, please. Can we all do that? And please make it the 23rd to the 24th of March, 2015.
Charlie, do you want me to mark that in my date as well?
Yes, you can, Mark.
Thank you.
As long as your rates are the same as they were this year. Okay, we're happy to do that. Okay, so welcome to our panelists. Thank you very much for your time. It's always tough doing the last slot and to hold people in the room. So what I would like to do is to open the questions myself. And I'm thinking back to, feels like a long time ago, doesn't it? BBC's Linda's presentation that started this event, talking about the macroeconomic situation globally and the gradual power shift to Asia. We talk a lot about that at these conferences, but let's go a little bit further into this. I'd like to hear from each of you which markets here in the region are particularly exciting to you, the markets that you may be putting a little bit more investment in, where you see growth and excitement and innovation coming from. And let's take it from there. So why don't we start with Vishnu first?
Okay. Firstly, I guess the region is exciting. So, but since you asked specifically about which particular markets, and everybody talks about China and India and certain markets, but what I would like to talk about is one that is probably less spoken about. Okay, and that's the VIP markets. We call it VIP because it stands for Vietnam, Indonesia, and Philippines. And if you look at the characteristics of this cluster, okay, they're quite homogeneous in the sense of they've all got scale, some sense of scale, because you're talking about 100 million people in Vietnam, close to 100 million people in Philippines, and a huge 250 million in Indonesia. So collectively, you're talking about 500 million in this cluster. Also, what's very important is if you actually look at the digital adoption in terms of all of these markets is phenomenal. Not necessarily maybe reflective in terms of the penetration rate, but you look at it in terms of the people who can afford and actually using it, and the social part of that, it's really very, very high. So if you actually look at percentage of social adoption amongst people who actually have, these are 3 very heavily social countries, which is why you are seeing many of these OTTs, you know, whether be it Kakao, WeChat, any of these guys, they're all focused on this cluster as the first important ports of expansion. And they're all, lastly, if you look at it from a demographically perspective, all of these have a huge amount of population which is still very, very young. So if you look at from a pure perspective of scale, potential, and digital per se, I think that this is really an extremely exciting region where we are keeping a big eye on it and investing in it.
Jeffrey, those markets, like so many in Asia, have this interesting contradiction. Young populations that are highly digital in the way they lead their lives, but very conservative infrastructures and often sort of quite undemocratic regimes, often hampering your growth, the development of media through legislation. So is there a tension between those forces, and how do you see that changing going forward?
Sounds like you're talking about Singapore, but I'll come to that a bit more. I think these three markets, I think Vishnu has a point on that, that these markets have, I think in their urge, in the economic growth, they have taken a few jumps, leaps over a few traditional progress markers. I think many villages, you look at today's Indonesian elections, if you go online, if you read Bahasa, you look at some of the headmen, what the village masters, what they propose. Instead of building a school and a bridge, they promised the electorate that they will build a Wi-Fi pole. They said, I will build 3 Wi-Fi poles in the town square and you vote for me. So this is what a headman in the village is proposing. Why are they doing so? I think on one hand, they recognize that this digital world has actually opened everyone up, that you cannot put a lid on things, right? Too much. And you let the people express and give them a pressure exhaust valve. But what you're also facing is that these three markets, that are the VIP markets that Vishnu mentioned, these three markets are probably some of the oldest markets in Asia. And they have a long history. So now you have a chance for a market with a lot of literature, a lot of content in our new world. We call it content. And they are uploading their content into the digital world. All the social mores, the folk stories, what the country stands for, their history, their traditional strength before they were colonized. And now they are all calling the spirit of the past that they will point to the future for them. So these three markets are now on the edge where they want to rule, they want to be part of the global economy. With the Asia Free Trade Agreement coming on, they think that when the markets are openly, the tariffs are gone, they will dominate, just like China dominated the world when they were looking, the world was looking for a factory floor. All right? So these three markets are telling themselves they are ready. And the governments, in order to play that, have no choice but to play the game. So today, my advice to all my clients, if you're looking for a digital channel that works, pick one that's used by the political party, right? If it works for them to get re-elected, then that's the one that will work for you, right? Whether you have that, Damien was talking about a conversation engine in Philips, right? And I told him, I said, Philips being a company from Holland, I think you should take the look at how the Indonesian market is doing, right? And that way, their spirit of work, many clients in Indonesia, a big client of Starcom Midwest Group, Garuda, they have close to, just last week, they hired close to 80 people into their information center after what happened to Malaysia Airlines. They figured that they cannot let it happen again to anyone, and it could happen to anyone. So they're all clear out there trying to manage this, and they will manage it better than any government. So I think these undemocratic practices will soon be pushed over by the digital world, and I think information, the free flow of information cannot be stopped. And I think that, at that point itself, that's when the clients and also maybe the earlier panelists, as you look at the value that the agencies bring, I think the one currency that's missing is the value of the society and how information is exchanged. If we take that back into the game, then I think agencies will not be in a commission game or being underpaid.
Ajit, your challenge is to talk about a country that's not been mentioned. So we've talked briefly about Vietnam, Indonesia, Pakistan as sort of of interest to you. Philippines, sorry. Sorry, putting answers into your mouth. What other areas that are of particular interest to you in the region?
Yeah, I would slightly differ from Vishnu here. And the reason I'm differing is I'll put two bases on which I'm selecting the country. And my selection of countries would be China first, India second. Because there is a difference between potential growth opportunities and potential what we can do versus what's really happening. Like, for example, India's story, I mean, I've been hearing for 10 years or 15 years, India's potential growth possible, but that's never really materialized in real terms because of the change infrastructure, government, policy making, stuff like that. So the only organized market that I can see where the government is interested, the consumer is interested, the corporates are interested is China. And when these three clicks in, I think it's the best for environment to grow in a much organized and a better way. And the second reason that I would say is that, see, most of us, I mean, sitting here, are working for multinational companies, right? I mean, if you look at real advertising expenditure and the potential future of tapping in this young or the real money that is there in these countries, we don't even touch 1/3 or 1/2 of the market in these countries. I mean, whether you call the VIP markets or whether you call India, China, at least 1/3 or half of the market is still not touched by any of us. If there has to be a bit of scientific knowledge, learnings passed on, brands to be built. I mean, I heard one of the sessions where 10,000 corporates are touching base on digital to sell their products, and soon enough they will become corporates of medium size, small size, big size. And if we have to tap into that, there is a different model or different people that and this exists in these markets. Now it exists in VIP markets, it exists in China and India too. The good part would be in China and India, our ability to take risk, fail a few times, learn on the course could be much easier or obvious compared to some of the other markets where it could exist, and until the regime or the policy or the infrastructure changes, we really can't touch those 1/2 of the market.
Jeffrey talks about the democratizing power of digital and changing over time practices, political attitudes. You mentioned China. We're still seeing the case that it's still hard for a brand to do a big event and get people congregating together without the government feeling a little bit concerned and not granting licenses for certain things. You have Dick Costolo today, that's why he couldn't be here, in China, doing his tour, trying to convince the authorities to allow officially Twitter in the market. Do you see a gradual liberalization happening in China?
Certainly. I mean, part of the reason why a lot of these regulations come into the place is how the Chinese government looks at it. I mean, is it the global companies wanting to enter China, or is it the Chinese companies wants to encash on outside world? So their regulations can differ and policies can differ. Is it about reaching out to mass audiences? Look at the e-commerce success of China. I mean, you don't need, you can have a complete virtual world and transactions happening there, and that can be a successful model in a mass market, and you don't need the traditional models of establishing in cities, then going down to top cities and stuff like that.
Just on this theme, thank you very much. On this theme of power and change, do you see yourselves as future global CEOs of your organizations? Do you think the experience in Asia gives you the edge now because it's such the fastest growing and most exciting area? Ajit?
Oh. There are already many cases of global CEOs across companies.
Maybe put it a different way to hide your modesty. Do you think that some of the people in your teams that you're bringing up now in the business, just in the same way as the Americans and French and Brits seem to dominate the higher echelons of the agency business currently, do you see talent within your teams going forward that you would put money on them being the global CEOs of tomorrow?
I certainly would. Especially people who are making the difference in the big data or digital space or new technology space. I would rather distinguish the person not more from the geography, but more from the talent and what is he bringing on the table. If a lot of the fresh talent is looking at the current CEOs and global or regional CEOs or as their success leaders, I don't think it would be right for them. They should create those benchmarks and adapt to the new technology, new data, and that can make them the global CEOs. Now, whether it comes from Asia Pacific, China, or wherever, Europe, US, I don't think that would make any difference.
Okay. Jeffrey?
I think the answer is in a rising star.
Yes.
That's why we are sponsoring it. I agree.
And we will find tonight who's won the Rising Star award, which is great. Yeah.
I think there are some people, I think there are some much younger people who I think will become the future global CEOs. I feel that many of them have in them a certain set of skill sets and also exposures that allow them to be in that place. I share some thoughts whenever I speak with some of the young interns that we have. I tell them, I said, you've got to be jack of all trades, master of 10 in this new world. I think if you are not in that space to know more than 5, 6 domain areas, they ain't going to succeed. It's tough. I tell them also that they need to have a very good backpacker mentality. You need to be able to backpack, go to a place in 10 days, understand the run of the rule of the land, understand how to do business there, and get your way through. If you grow up in an environment where it's about package tours and only doing a certain way, then you will struggle to succeed. I tell the boys, I think you need to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. Right? That's a line I often use. I said, most of them are not in those markets, VIP markets. I think we talk about wanting to expand in many parts of the world. I struggle to invite many clients, my friends, my colleagues to go to Indonesia. I said, okay, I'll give you a security detail. He said, no, Jeff, I don't want that because then I'll be the site of a kidnap. And some of them tell me I don't want to be in a YouTube video, with my head being sawn off. I said, no, we're not going to that space, right? A couple of my colleagues, I have some of my colleagues were also on that point. Also, I said some of my colleagues were also brave. We took a pitch in Pakistan, and my British colleague made the journey there to pitch for the business. And I think nothing happened to him because things were all right. I think we got caught up by the mass media. I think jack of all trades, master of 10, uncomfortable, being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. I think the final one is when those who can make it are those that I think build a network of friends. I think as they start young, coming into the game, our business when we first started was very siloed, right? It was the creative agency, media agency, the DM agency, the media vendors, media partners, the traders, and all you can find the scientists. I think now many of them interchange in different positions, and they do that and their presence in different ecosystems allows them to build enough of a wider base. With LinkedIn, with Facebook, it builds up a wider pool. If they continuously keep in touch and attend events like Festival of Media Asia, I'm sure they will continue to have a base that will help them succeed in the future. But I think the future CEO will not be easy. They will not be able to domicile a location. They will have to maybe stay 3 months in one area, 3 months in another area, and move around. You probably can't have a global headquarters in any position. And you've got to probably dissipate a lot of your bench strength across the world. It is a world that is far from central control. I would say that you have to control it in a digital way where you have a lot of notes and then run it. That person, I think, do not exist in this field. You will come from younger folks.
So, if you put your money on one of your team being the next CEO of Havas Media?
Absolutely. I think if you really see as to why something like that is being blocked or not thought of today, it's probably the level of importance of Asia, right? And so, but if you heard some of the speeches where not just the future of what Asia might belong as a percentage of global, even for many ad agency worlds, you're already talking about 25%, 20 to 25%. So that already gives a significant base for somebody to really consider this as even from a presence perspective, not from a future perspective, to have somebody from here. Stephen talked about earlier about 2 homegrown talents leading 2 American brands, okay, from being in Asia. So obviously, it's not that people at the top are not thinking about the possibility of people from this region being true blue leaders of the globe and keeping in mind what is the most important region of the future.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Do we have any questions for the panel? I'm hogging them.
And I would like to add that, some of these things are happening. I mean, for example, Max's global CEO is actually stationed out of 2 homes, one in India, one in US. So it's actually 2 homes.
Yeah. Mr. Sakuja.
We'll pick on somebody. Hello. What's been your favorite part of the conference over the last 2 days?
Terrible.
That's catching her.
To hear from all the thought leaders and knowing about the latest trends and technologies.
Who was the most interesting speaker?
I like the conference chairman summing up all the important points.
Very good.
What a very, very magnanimous and beautiful. What about you, madam? What's been your favorite talk?
Okay, I've only been here for this afternoon, so I guess my choices are. I like the talk about, I think it was earlier on before lunch, about the advertising and on digital. That one was very fascinating, but also very frustrating.
You're talking about programmatic. So, programmatic in your businesses, gentlemen. Do you agree with the sentiment that clients mistrust the trading desks that you're supporting because they don't quite know whether they're buying the media from you or buying the medium from the digital media owners. Do you think that's a problem? Jeffrey?
I think trust often needs a line of sight. In the early years of digital, clients were asking, "Are you sure you have the ad running? Can I go check your ad on the thing?" And then when you go up, take a look at the ad, it clicks the ad, I lost the impression, right? So those were the days. I think programmatic buying the thought is quite scary, ability to buy things on real-time marketplace that we do not know. But if you explain it to a client in the world of finance, corporate finance, it's like when you want to buy a share on a company, a stock of a company in America or the British board, you go to your local remiser. They give you a system that allows you to buy shares everywhere. Now, if you think of it in that sense, that you can buy equities in different companies across the world via one big system, and that's what programmatic buying is about. And if you look at it, take it a bit further, you're buying a fund, a venture fund, right, for your retirement, and you can buy it off a certain geographic location. You wouldn't ask what are the component stocks in that fund that is based out of Greenwich. So I think if you draw the analogies to clients that way, they will see it that way. But often than not, I think we also are blinded by our glasses of the past. We think that the business world, if it goes automatic, I'm sure there's a lot of middlemen who takes different cuts. So I wouldn't say it doesn't exist because a lot of startups who have a lot of inventory, they don't bother to hire new people. They don't hire people. They just sell the inventory off to the highest bidders, right? And so that does happen with different markups along the way. But programmatic, by and large, I think currently it takes a leap of faith because no one understands the system. But if we do open the hood up and let clients take a deeper look, I think they will understand that it's no different from the corporate finance world.
Okay. I think if you think, Charlie, from a whole host of the early adopters of programmatic buying, which are largely performance clients, and if they start to compare against what they were buying earlier, okay, in terms of through networks versus what the kind of performance value that they're getting an enormous value as a result of the programmatic buying. So I think if at all, the first part is trust before mistrust comes in, because what they've really gained in this process is a huge value that they didn't have before as a result of not having programmatic buying. So I don't think that's something that's, as Jeffrey rightly put, it's you'll have it's a leap of faith, but in reality, it is transitory. This is purely a transitory phenomena.
Ajit, the Xaxis model is slightly different.
No, actually, I would agree with Xaxis model is not very different because at WPP, we have a pretty transparent way of contracting with our clients. Clients who have understood the entire model of Xaxis are the innovators and moved into that kind of model. Right. Now, the whole Xaxis model, if the issue is only about pricing, I don't think anybody has understood the Xaxis model. It's about performance, outcomes, audiences, segments and stuff like that, and it's not about a trading practice. And once that model is understood, that you can move from performance to buying audiences to delivering outcomes, I don't think this whole issue of pricing and trust issue will come up. And like some of the things that Pete mentioned, if clients truly believe that there is value creation, there is effectiveness, and there is whole outcome, the decision is based on outcomes, I don't think these models will evolve more, and when these ages be past ages, I think all clients will understand what this model is.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
What's your name?
Suzanne.
And do you have a question for the panel?
I do.
Is it a good one?
You might.
The other one that's been asked.
Okay. So you're in the running for the free ticket.
Well, since I'm the only one who's asked the question, yes.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. There's been a lot of talk the last couple days about being able to get local and making sure that we're developing things at a local level that it work in those marketplaces. But then a lot of the people who have stated those things have been Westerners that have been brought in because they have experience doing it already in another market.
Right.
So I'm just curious about how each of you are building up your staffs in the local markets to address this, kind of leapfrogging some of the stumbling blocks that happened in other markets, but also making sure that it's being built with that local perspective.
Thank you. Vishnu first.
All right. The question about are we developing enough stuff in local markets that could become role models and not just importing every time something that's coming from the West. A great example is, for us, the innovation lab for us is actually in Philippines. Okay, we actually have most of what we are developing at the leading edge all coming from Philippines. In fact, in this festival, we launched one of the innovations called Heartbot, which is a Twitter-based physical action. So by an actual hashtag, you can actually illuminate a bulb, light up, push up a fan, and that's an innovation coming from this region that the group will adopt globally for benefit of any of the advertisers. So I don't think today, if you really talk about it, it's about that everything is coming in only from west inwards to east. A lot of what is happening, okay, is actually being generated in this region that is being exported globally across all networks.
Thank you. At Maxis, luckily our business is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, US, Europe, and Asia Pacific. We have a program called Endeavor, where if you look at a lot of these big programs like Cannes or CES or Retail Forum, it's the top management and the Exco and all that's people who actually visit these markets for experiences. What we do in Endeavor is we actually run a contest across the globe where it's the youngsters who actually take part in the program and get selected. And these 7 or 8 or 10 of people actually goes to these forums to get the experience of Cannes. And these are like 3 to 5 years experienced people going to the CES, retail forums. And it's an active way of knowing the world, knowing the network, working on a real project and writing on it and evangelizing it across the globe.
I have a slight take on this point. I think one of the things we have felt in this last couple of years was the local adaptation of the strategic thought that we have at a global level. In Asia, the digital world has just moved on in such funny speeds that we do not know where it's going to end up tomorrow. So we have a very strong tool in the Starcom Universe group world called TARDIS, which is a TV optimizer. Then we came to Asia. Some of the local chaps, the younger folks, decided to fuse digital data into it. So they started fusing digital data into it. They fuse Twitter data into it, Facebook data into it, and all the stuff that goes into it. And I asked them a question, why do you do that? They said, Jeff, I'm going home at 1 a.m. at night because I had to run 3 different schedules for a client. But since I want to go home at 11 p.m. to go to a party, I decided to put all the optimizers into one, so it allows me to go home. Now we started off with a bunch of young folks that was trying to do TV, digital, and online planning, and then it became a tool that we're now cascading across the world. I think the story behind it is, if you allow your organizations, whether they're in Asia or anywhere else, to be sensitive and responsive to what goes on in the local market scene, and then they can bring it back and institutionalize it into the system, into the work processes, then you are on a track to be a good agile company. So that optimizer today has got us in a bit of a lot of new business pitches and being invited ironically by many media partners, vendors, who wants to pipe their data into the system. So is it a one-off, a flash in a pan? I don't know, but I do feel that the culture of the company is very important for innovation to happen continuously.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Ooh, things are falling apart here. Hello. Before you ask your question, what was your favourite speaker over the last 2 days?
I've enjoyed most of them, actually. I thought the interview this afternoon with the MediaCom was great.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. What do you think of MediaCom?
I like them. They're good clients.
Do you know Ashish Williams from MediaCom?
Not really, no.
Is Ashish Williams here? Where is he? He's standing up. Okay. Can we give a round of applause to Ashish Williams from MediaCom, please? Isn't that lovely? Excellent. So thank you. You can sit down now, Ashish. Thank you. No. Actually, you've just won a Microsoft Surface 2. Oh. Congratulations. Oh. Well done. Your card was pulled out of the hat just minutes ago. It's by magic. Okay, tell us your name, where you're from, and the question to the panel.
Hi, I'm Rushit from Fremantle Media. I have a question to the panel. Vishnu, you mentioned the VIP markets. Most of the spends in these markets are still on traditional media. So I wanted, it's a question to the panel. What is it that you're doing different on those mediums, and what is it that you're looking for when you advertise?
Good question. Vishnu.
Very good question. I think you are right about the fact that the bulk of this market, the spend is very much on television. And not only that, if I just may take a few minutes to step back and refer to Linda's original speech, and she talked a lot about the future of Asia. And if you really think about it, there are two things. There's a scale economy and there's an yield economy. We talk a lot about scale economy because of a lot of people. When you actually talk about the scale economy turning into yield economy, the value of what you create in Asia in terms of pricing is still far off from what it is there in the West. Okay, so if you actually impute the same value that you could get on CPMs to Asian media versus international media, Asia would already be now 40% of global advertising. Now that's not happening, okay, and that's going to take some time, and that's a challenge that we have, and which is why the reason that we still have to do many things with television. But the point is that if you look at television as a means of viewing and digital as a means of interacting with what you are viewing, and try to be able to do both at the same time, you are actually creating the future. And this is where we are trying to see. We are trying to see a lot of how do we actually use digital media in terms of fusing with what people are actually watching on television in this multi-screen environment. And that, I think, is really the future of what you can do in this market. Because if you actually look at Indonesia, for example, every single person is on a smartphone or a BBM while watching, let's say, Indonesian Idol, for example. And do you actually need the number of votes that go out in a market like that? How do you actually tap into what you can do with that little smartphone which is in the hands of the people while they're watching it? So on one hand, there's an advertising that's happening, but there's also an efficient way of tapping into somebody who's actually having that other screen which is in their hands delivering. And I think that is sometimes the missing thing that many are forgetting in terms of being able to only looking at purely from a number point of view and saying that the television has so much reach or so much.
Ajit.
I can add that from a slightly India perspective, or that applies to a lot of these growing economies. There are 2-3 things. When we look at these economies, there are three audiences there. One is the audience which are much evolved, much like a Westerner, aware of every brand, multi-screen. There is a middle mass, okay, where TV still works, print still works. I mean, it's not readership has not come down there, nor the spends have come down, because there is a mass market and there are 2,000, 3,000 brands advertising there, and we just probably touch upon 500 brands that we are talking about. And the third bit is still untapped. So there is this whole segment where mass media is still growing. So whether it's China, whether it's India, wherever you look at Indonesia, the mass market, and like Vishnu mentioned, the mobile could be the facilitator there. So a lot of times we need to recognize this when we look at a standard number of saying, okay, we are spending 10% or 12% of our monies on digital, but that could actually mean 20% in the top segment and probably less than 2% in the bottom segment. The other big factor, according to me, is language. So a lot of times when we are planning for brands, and if you look at India, 97% of internet pages is English. Now, we have reached a level of saturation if you have to grow only through English audiences. I mean, that's not even 37 million people or related to that kind of readership numbers that we have. Now, if you really have to grow internet spends, we have to turn the usage of these pages or content both sides has to turn into 10 other languages. And once that grows, you will suddenly see India moving into a 400 million audiences or 500 million audiences, and that's when the advertising money will really come. Because marketers are smart. They know where they're getting their bang for the buck. So a part of is like we being not just trusted advisors, trusted leaders of leading the client, and partly it's the audience, real mass audiences coming there. Look at China. I mean, China, because it's a language thing, it's gone to almost 25%.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move to the next question here. I've got two major clients just sitting in the audience here. I thought it'd be quite interesting. We have Americo de Campos Silva from Shell and Peter, we just heard from Mondelez. Do you have a question for the panel, Americo?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Going back to the previous subject of programmatic, I would like to have your point of view on why agencies don't propose to clients to use independent companies, and they insist in, or the first choice is always the programmatic company that they have in their own holding companies. Because that's what really creates the conflict of interests and some suspicions. Good one, Charlie.
That was a lovely question. Thank you very much, Americo. And it falls upon Jeffrey Seah to answer it first.
Charlie's favorite question.
I think Charlie, you like to continue sponsorship.
Thankfully, Jeffrey, we do try to keep church and state separate.
Not in Singapore, you see. No, I get arrested when I get out there. I think a good question on this. I think the maturity of the programmatic buying, the whole journey is still. I think we're still at the early stages right now. Some of the commercial relationships before the inventory gets put in the programmatic buying requires many different steps. Today, I think you look at the whole programmatic buying angle. If I bring us back to the finance analogy, we have mutual funds, we have pre-IPO listers, we have folks who are resellers on private marriages, private share managers. Everyone putting inventory into a pool and looking for someone to buy shares in the pool itself. If you look at it from that finance point, this is what's happening in the programmatic buying pool. We have big players who want to put their spare inventory down, their non-premium inventory. We have resellers also doing that. And in that process itself, this whole programmatic buying is a hodgepodge of many different types. But what we do is we segment according to the audiences that we want. And this is the game behind programmatic buying. If you get the right segment, what you are looking at is super ultra high level performance marketing that's targeting at them. Now, how do all these relationships put in? How do we audit all this? It is tough to go because it's not one supplier. Sometimes it could be 1,000 or 2,000. And when you buy a bundle of it, it could come from 700 or 1,000 suppliers. And in the individual relationships that is put into the point to sell, in the individual contracts that's done with a different partner, also put in place a different set of auditing requirements that you mentioned earlier. So it's not a straightforward audit for every one of them, but it goes across all the different players. I think with time, with more maturity of the market, there will be a certain form of, I think, established practices where everyone goes through, every person that comes on, we get it brand safe and also audit safe. We put people on. But I think that process will come with time as each of the agencies find ways and means to check on those folks. Many of I asked a big question to my own programmatic buying teams. Why do many of those third-party tracking devices in the programmatic buying origin out of Eastern Europe? We have that question. I ask that question more often than not because many of the partners that go inside there, when they try to look at segmentation, they route it through servers in Eastern Europe because that's the best. They have the best segment, what they call the best programmers and segmenters in the world that are based in Eastern Europe. But we require those people because without those people, we can't segment the audiences correctly. So this whole world out there is a bit like the finance world, where there are consultants everywhere, but everyone knows the end result, which is the Apple share. But the Apple share can be bought through very different exchanges, right? I think this is where right now we don't explain enough to our clients to lift the hood up for them to see, because at the same time, the industry needs to get to a certain state where they are comfortable to share the third-party contracts. But the promise I think the agency must give to the clients is that the trust comes with the contract between agency and the client. And I think that's a starting point for everyone.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Ajit, yes, briefly, if you can add to that. Thank you.
Can I add that in two parts? One is if agency or planners are doing that blindly, I think it's short term. It won't sustain. Clients will soon find out. But the second part is also important, which is cheap is always not good. So there are hundreds of ad networks. If you look at this only as a trading platform, like we discussed in the last panel also, if you are worried about outcomes, performance, so you can buy click-throughs and So even the programmatic buy has got quality, focus on result. So it's a match of both. So if we can appreciate that balance of both, one is blindly selling their own ad networks or the focus on quality, I think that balance is important.
Thank you very much. Vishnu, you get away with that. You get away with it. Well done.
Okay.
I have one very, very quick final question, which is in a short one-sentence answer, what's the point of difference between your agency, and your agency? Vishnu, you can go first. One sentence.
Meaningful
What
brand.
makes Havas Media different from the other two agencies that are sitting to your left?
We build meaningful brands.
Jeffrey, you don't build meaningful brands.
I think we focus on getting the right human experience.
Okay. And Ajit?
We help brands and clients lean into the changing world.
Which one do you prefer? Havas? Viveki? Maxus? Okay, we got some, okay, fair enough. After you've seen some of the last 2 days, again, final answers to your, as a summing up, what speakers have you enjoyed the most? What information, insights have you taken from the last 2 days of this conference? And I'm going to start again with Vishnu.
I think everything. I mean, if I look at the debates that have happened throughout the sessions on specific topics, be it the Twitter stuff, be it the programmatic buying, be it the payment stuff that was just talked prior to this, as well as the many client sessions that we've had, which really showcased interesting aspects of how they are using the new media through the various things. The use of the social listening center in-house, that was also a great learning. So I think overall, if I see the 2 days, it's been a very fascinating, 2 days with really interesting aspects of various things that are true blue topic issues in the media industry being talked about.
Thank you. Jeffrey?
I think the agenda this year is a lot more diverse and wide, and I think it's right because I think it reflects the current read on the ground, which is we have many questions but very few decisions made. I thought that these 2 days posed a lot more questions for everyone else attending, the clients, a lot of my staff, and also I think with the partners as well. So I think it's good. The questions are posed. It means we're all thinking.
Thank you. And Ajit?
Across the multiple sessions, I like the whole session. Multiple sessions pointed out this whole concept of social coming to the center of the organization. Now, social is no longer digital. Social is part of marketing, and we could see a lot of clients creating this, whether you call it some command centers, whether you call it Hive, and I think it's a very apt thing to do. It came out on this conference much more than any other conference, and I think a lot more clients can, if they do this, social can actually start playing a role in each part of the marketing element: messaging, listening, CRM, loyalty management, all of it. And over the last few years, we have heard of it. I love that fact that it's getting implemented. Brilliant.
Well, thank you very much for the panelists for answering the questions. Thank you for some of you for being put on the spot. Could we give a huge round of applause to our 3 panelists to finish off and round it up?